Shore Murder Task Force began yet another investigation.
They were among the most shocking and unusual serial killings in criminal history.
Police have issued a warning to elderly people not to venture out alone.
And tonight, that history will be rewritten.
There were at least 4 unsolved murders. He could be good for any of them.
The cold-blooded slaying of elderly women in Australia has rarely been seen anywhere else in the world.
It was really quite scary for everyone who was vulnerable that he may just appear.
But that's what happened here in Australia during a 14-month reign of terror in the late 1980s.
It was one of the biggest stories of that era. It was huge and it stayed that way.
There was never a killer more ruthless yet cowardly than John Wayne Glover.
He probably enjoyed an older person because they couldn't fight back as much.
Meet John Wayne Glover, a man with a chilling reputation as the Granny Killer. This British-born Australian serial killer struck fear into the hearts of many. In a span of just over a year, from 1989 to 1990, he ruthlessly took the lives of 6 elderly women on Sydney's North Shore. Did Glover's horrifying crimes truly send shockwaves across the nation, and did he openly confess to these horrific acts? What kind of punishment awaited him for his evil deeds? And what compelled Glover to take his own life in prison? But join us as we get on a journey into the unsettling story of John Wayne Glover, infamously known as the Granny Killer. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to give a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Let's get started. Early life. Hailing from a humble background in Wolverhampton, England, Glover's life took a turbulent turn. His journey was marked by a series of small-time crimes, including stealing clothing and handbags dating back to 1947. A path that led him to leave school at just 14 years old. Although he briefly served in the British Army, his criminal activities caught up with him, resulting in his expulsion in 1956 or 1957. Glover made a life-altering decision and immigrated to Australia, arriving in Melbourne with no formal qualifications. Little did anyone know that his move to a new continent would mark the beginning of a dark chapter. Shortly after his arrival, Glover faced legal trouble, with convictions for larceny in Victoria and a stealing charge in New South Wales. By 1962, he found himself convicted on multiple counts of assaulting and indecently assaulting women in Melbourne, leaving a trail of victims. Despite these convictions, he received a 3-year good behavior bond. Glover's complex relationship with older women, notably his mother Freda, who had numerous husbands and boyfriends, further added to the intricacies of his life. After marrying Gay Rolls and moving into his parents-in-law's house in Mosman, Sydney, Glover's turbulent history took a darker turn. In 1976, his mother moved to Australia, only to succumb to breast cancer in 1989. That very year, Glover was diagnosed with male breast cancer. His marriage with Gay Rolls eventually faltered, leading her to take their daughters to New Zealand. However, before embarking on his killing spree in the late 1980s, John Glover was seen as a friendly and reliable volunteer at the Senior Citizens Society, and his seemingly content life in Mosman painted a different picture. He worked as a sales representative for the 4N20 Meat Pie Company, a stark contrast to the darkness that would later unfold in his life. Murders. In the late 1980s, a series of gruesome crimes shook the community. John Glover, who had no prior convictions before 1989, was a married man with 2 daughters, living a seemingly ordinary life. His criminal past remained a well-guarded secret from his wife. Glover's descent into darkness began with a mugging in 1989 when he brutally attacked 84-year-old Margaret Toadhunter in Mosman, taking her money. The police initially dismissed this as a random mugging gone wrong. Just months later, Glover turned to more sinister acts. He targeted 82-year-old Gwendolyn Mitchell, following her from a local club. Armed with a hammer, he viciously assaulted her, causing her fatal injuries. Despite the brutality of the crime, the police couldn't find any concrete evidence linking it to the previous attack on Margaret Toadhunter. The chilling pattern continued as he set his sights on 84-year-old Lady Ashton, the widow of an accomplished artist. Glover donned gloves and a brutal approach, attacking her in her apartment building's foyer. He left her lifeless body in a grisly scene, again robbing her. These attacks left a signature mark, indicating a serial killer on the loose. All the victims were elderly, well-off women from the same neighborhood, and they met a similar gruesome end before being robbed. More crimes followed, with Glover molesting elderly women in nursing homes and assaulting others on the streets. The police were baffled as these cases seemed unrelated. Then, on a fateful day in November 1989, Glover escalated his violence. He approached 78-year-old Dorothy Benke, offering to help her with groceries, but as they walked, he attacked another elderly woman, 85-year-old Margaret Pahud, while her back was turned. After a brutal assault, he stole her belongings. Olive Cleveland became the fourth victim of this predator just a day later, marking the work of the sinister granny killer. Glover lured her to a secluded spot, subjected her to a horrifying assault, and took her money. The terror continued as 93-year-old Muriel Falconet fell victim to Glover's brutality. He followed her home, assaulted her with a hammer, strangled her with her own undergarments, and ransacked her house. In this horrific spree, Glover's actions left behind a trail of death and despair, initially mistaken for accidents and muggings. The community lived in fear, and investigators struggled to piece together the horrific puzzle. Rewards were increased, but the granny killer remained at large, leaving the city gripped in fear. Police investigation. On a fateful day in January 1990, John Glover, a pie salesman, entered a hospital in his work uniform and made an indecent advance towards Daisy Roberts, an 82-year-old patient. When Roberts raised an alarm, a nurse intervened and identified Glover, leading to a significant breakthrough. However, the hospital assaults were not immediately linked to the string of murders, delaying the flow of information to the murder task force. A while later, when police approached Glover for questioning, he was found to have attempted suicide. In a suicide note found at the hospital, Glover wrote about no more grannies and mentioned his mother-in-law. Though this was a crucial lead, it took some time for this information to reach the task force investigating the murders. Following this, detectives were convinced that Glover might be the murderer, but lacked concrete evidence. Glover was under constant police surveillance. However, a tragic turn of events unfolded when Glover killed his final victim, Joan Sinclair, whom he knew well. Glover confessed to the police that he had a relationship with Sinclair. He brutally attacked her, causing fatal injuries. Sinclair's body was found at her home, wrapped in towels to stop the bleeding. In a tragic and dramatic turn of events, Glover attempted to end his life by consuming pills, slashing his wrist, and lying in a filled bathtub. Confession sketch. Shortly before his own demise, John Glover, the notorious killer, handed a visitor a sketch of a park. In this seemingly innocent drawing, he highlighted 2 pine trees. However, there was a cryptic message hidden within it. Among the leaves and branches of the right pine tree, one could discern the number 9. This mysterious number 9 could be interpreted in 2 ways. It might symbolize the total number of murders committed by Glover, or it could point to the number of unsolved murders he had left in his wake. The list of unresolved cases that could potentially be linked to Glover's heinous acts includes Emmy Mae Anderson, age 78, from East Melbourne, 19 October 1961, Irene Kittle, age 61, from Seakilda, Victoria, 22, March 1963, Elsie Boyce, age 63, from Peran, Victoria, 3 June 1967, Christina Yankos, age 63, from Albert Park, 9 April 1968, Florence Broadhurst, age 78, from Paddington, New South Wales, 16 October 1977, Josephine MacDonald, age 72, from Ettalong, New South Wales, 19 August 1984, Wanda Amundsen, aged 83, from Umina, New South Wales, 21 November 1986. These cases remain unresolved, shrouded in mystery, leaving a lingering question of whether John Glover's reign of terror extended even further than initially believed. Imprisonment and death. John Glover was imprisoned in Lithgow prison, where he was confined to a high-security cell. In May 2005, he failed in his cell and expressed a desire to end his own life. Therefore, he was placed under constant watch to prevent any self-harm. A mental health review team examined him, and he was closely monitored through closed-circuit television. Additionally, medical examinations were conducted to follow up on 2 cancer surgeries he had undergone the previous year. Tragically, on 10 September 2005, Glover was discovered lifeless in his maximum security prison cell in Lithgow. At the age of 72, the serial killer had taken his own life by hanging himself. So the moving story of John Wayne Glover, infamously known as a granny killer, ends in a tragic note. His brutal acts scared an entire community, resulting in multiple life sentences without parole. Glover, who openly admitted to his crimes, chose to end his own life through suicide in 2005. The haunting cryptic sketch he left raises questions about the possible extent of his horrors. This dark journey serves as a stark reminder of evil in unexpected places. If you found this video interesting, please show your support with a thumbs up. To stay updated on more gripping true crime stories, subscribe to our channel and ring the notification bell.